Hello and welcome to Finals Focus, brought to you by Sharp EIT Soultions. Sarah Ollie here with Alastair Clarkson and Matthew Lloyd. Clarko, great to have you on board for the next 4 weeks as we dissect everything in September.
Yeah, best time of the year in AFL footy is September, so excited by what the next month and how it all unfolds, and there'll be a club lifting silverware in about 4 weeks' time.
And could you believe it, Lloyd? Just 9 matches to go. It's been a wild ride, and I think perhaps the best reserved for last.
There is. It's, as Clarko said, it's why you play footy. We had a wonderful home and away season, and it's great to be on the same team as Clarko at the moment.
Isn't
so not
indeed?
like it used to be back in the old days.
bit of biffo. Yeah.
All the wealth and experience of Clarko. And given that, with the 4 mouth-watering clashes to come our way this weekend, which one do you fancy the most?
Well, I love the intrigue around Friday night. Hawks versus Bulldogs. In my view, the best 2 teams in the second half of the year, and one of them's going to get eliminated on Friday night. So I reckon the gloves will be off. There'll be a bit of biffo, and this I reckon is going to be a great contest, and really excited to see what that game dishes up.
We'll get to that one just shortly, but let's head to our first final. Thursday night at the Adelaide Oval, it's Port Adelaide taking on Geelong. Lloydie, if we go back to round 9 down at GMHBA Stadium, it was a wild game. There was momentum swings. Port secure the win. It was set up in the first half from a dominant midfield performance.
It was, Sarah. It's their greatest strength is the Port Adelaide midfield, and it's where I worry for Geelong. Have they got the explosive players, Dangerfield aside, to cope with Port Adelaide? So you take a look at them, and Jason Horne-Francis, he's in career best form right now heading into this final series. Zach Butters, he's tough, he's uncompromising, explosive pace. Connor Rozee, not going as well as the others, but in good form. Plus you got Wines and Boak and Drew Clarko. So how do Geelong contain this?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of power and speed, you know, and Wines is in there as well, who's probably a bit unheralded in terms of his contribution to that midfield too. But Geelong would need to make sure, very, very hard to centre bounce to do this, but to make sure they've always got a defensive layer behind wherever the ball is, and because if Port Adelaide get 1v none out the front of that stoppage, whether it's a centre bounce or midfield stoppage, then they're going to be very, very hard to stop. And but if they've got defensive protection there, then they might be able to stop those guys from having the damage that they can have.
Port Adelaide have a wonderful record opposed to Tom Stewart. They're the first to have started it, and they've got under his skin. And here's Tom Stewart. So Chris Scott has said, how do we free this guy up? Because he was out of form for about 6 weeks, shut down by a number of players. He moved him into the midfield, and he's changed his role. That's thrown a strategy at the opposition, which they've struggled with a little bit. So that is Tom Stewart, the way he plays. He starts midfield, gets behind the ball. But you look at Jed McEntee the last time they played in round 9, and Tom Stewart had a shocker. And Jed McEntee got under his skin, he pushed him, he shoved him, and it was wonderful play. Here is Jed McEntee. He just gave him no time and no space. How could this work in a different role with Tom Stewart?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit different now. As you said, Tom's been playing in the midfield, and so there's a gap between when he'll fall out of particularly centre bounce and drop back, where I wouldn't imagine McEntee would be in the centre bounce with him. If Ken decides to go with the strategy of trying to negate the influence of Stewart, it needs to happen after the centre bounce. And it would probably free up another Geelong defender, because that would be McEntee's initial opponent. But I'm sure that Port Adelaide will be putting a lot of time into Tom Stewart, and he's a key element to the Geelong game, and to stop his intercept marking will be crucial to the outcome of the game.
So will Port Adelaide bring the Kennedy and secure a home prelim, Clarko? Well, can the Cats cause a bit of an upset on the road?
Well, the Cats have got a great history of being able to do this. They're a terrific team that travels, but I think also there's a history there of Port Adelaide not winning these key finals in the first week of the finals, and that's a history that goes back now 20 years or so. So I think they'd be smart in Port Adelaide and really want to make sure that they get themselves through to a prelim in the first week of the finals.
And Lloydie, for you?
Yeah, I've doubted Port for 2 months, but they just keep winning and winning and winning. And that win over in Perth against Fremantle was superb again. So yeah, I think Port will be too strong in this one.
Well, let's turn our focus to Friday night at the MCG. As Clarko said, the gloves are going to be off with the Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn. It really is a bit of a shame that one of these two sides that are in great form are going to be knocked out. And for the Hawks, Lloydie, it's remarkable given their start at 0-5.
Yeah, they've made the season. I think they've made this season exciting with the way they're playing. They're a breath of fresh air. They love what they do, and it's this ball movement which is just electric. So, Clarko, how do you stop this? You know, they're all running in waves. Forwards are getting up high. How do you stop this ball movement?
Yeah, well, the bit of vision we're showing here is mainly by hand that they've used the footy, but a lot of their most potent work is done with their feet. Sicily, Hardwick, Scrimshaw, Amon, terrific kicks of the footy, and they don't need much space to be able to pierce through your midfield. So it's very, very difficult to combat outside of the Dogs getting the ball themselves, taking it inside 50 to an advantage to their bigger forwards, and make it hard for the Hawks to get their hands on the footy.
And we saw two forwards hold deep. Do they do that as well?
Yeah, they do, and Chol and Deer in particular won't squeeze down the ground as far as traditionally forwards have done in the past, and that allows them more space in the midfield to find those gaps for their elite kicks, and so that's going to be an intriguing part of the contest. Both sides can bounce really well, but the Dogs are more at stoppage. These guys are more rebound from half back.
And the Doggies have, I think, more depth through the clearance and the numbers they can throw through there. I know Warple and Newcombe are going well, but this centre bounce work from the Western Bulldogs is remarkable. Clarko, can you stop centre bounce for the Western Bulldogs, or is it more around the ground you can stop them?
Yeah, it's a little bit like Port Adelaide. Both these sides are really, really potent from centre bounce and from stoppage. And their use of the footy and getting guys out into space and shoulders out, being able to kick to their forwards is really, really important. And the Hawks are going to need to make sure that they don't get this sort of supply to their forwards. And that midfield battle is going to be crucial. It is in every game of footy that you play, but the Western Bulldogs have got a high number of players that can go through that area of the ground, but high quality players. Richards has gone in there over the last little while and given them real potency as well. So their capacity to flick the ball and get a bloke into space is elite, and if they win the game, it's because the Hawks have been unable to nullify that.
And the Hawks are not simply making up the numbers. They've steamrolled into finals. Their last 3 matches, they've won by an average of 87 points. Which way are you leaning, Clarko?
Well, the Kangas lifted that average a little bit further in the last game, but I'm leaning towards the Hawks.
Okay.
I think they're the form side of the competition at the minute, and they're going to be really hard to stop.
Lloyd, over there?
I think the Dogs are flying, and I think they've got every area of their game covered, and I think they win this game.
Let's now turn our focus to Saturday at the SCG, 3:20 p.m. The minor premiers in the Sydney Swans taking on the Giants. I mean, they don't have to travel too far for this away final at all. And it is going to be fascinating because we know the Giants have a formidable record in September against their Swans. They're 3-0. But this year, Lloydie, the Swans have actually won on both occasions. And Errol Goulden, he's been the protagonist. He
has 3 superstars you can focus on, Heaney, Warner and Goulden. And Goulden's running capacity is up there, probably the best in the competition. And we saw Steele Sidebottom have some success on him late in the season, but it's pretty hard to stop, Clarko. So what are some of the tactics to limit Errol Goulden?
Yeah, well, he, despite starting on the wing, he actually plays as a midfielder, which is a little bit confusing for opposition sides to try and work out where he's playing. Someone else pops out onto the wing, and that's why Collingwood had a bit of success with Sidebottom just going with him wherever he went. But he's at both these sides rebound the ball really, really well from their back half. And despite him not being a half-back flanker, he's involved in the conduit of the ball and the chain of possession, and quite often gets 2 or 3 possessions, and then it's such a beautiful kick. And as you said, his running power is elite. So if you've got a bloke that can actually run with him a little bit and stop him from wanting to run, then that could probably negate his influence a little bit. But that's a key matchup.
So he's a weapon for the Sydney Swans, and Lachie Whitfield's been a weapon for a number of years for the GWS Giants. And if you get it wrong, he will just destroy you. So here's the West Coast Eagles. They've got a young side. You can't give him this time and space. So the thing about Whitfield, he can go left foot, he can go right foot. So he'll swing behind, and they will give him the football. So here's another one. So if you switch off for a split second, Lachie Whitfield will absolutely punish you. But the fantastic thing about the Sydney Swans is they've got one of the recruits of the year in James Jordan, and he's doing the job time and time again. And he did the job on Lachie Whitfield last time around. And this is how disciplined he is. So he's got constant touch. And the thing about Whitfield is he just wants to get the footy. So he's already breaking out. And he's not focusing on Jordan. So Jordan's got a wonderful balance of when to defend and when to attack. And he kicks a couple of goals here, Clarko, on Lachie Whitfield.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that you've got an experienced player on Whitfield to know when to try to exploit him, because at different stages he will be a little bit loose in terms of his defence of the opposition ball movement. But we've got to make sure you're on him when GWS look like they're going to get the ball, because if you give him time or space off left foot, right foot, left hand, right hand, he's an elite user of the footy, and he's been a key part to why GWS have become such a potent side in the last 2 years.
So what do we make of this battle? Because the Giants, we know the record in September against the Swans, it's formidable. Is that a monkey on Sydney's back?
I wouldn't think so. I think they'd look at current form, and Sydney would go into this game knowing that they've played them a couple of times, and whether it's, I know it's home and away and different to finals, but one camp will be saying, yeah, we beat them in finals, so which will be the GWS mob, and Sydney will be saying, no, let's just go on recent form. It's going to be a cracking contest, this one. Both sides, as I said, rebound the ball really well off their back end. And really like to get the game flowing quickly and into their forward lines, and be really excited to see whether Papley comes back into the side, or I'm not sure where it's at in terms of his selection, but it's going to be a great battle, and I'm probably just favouring Sydney, but I wouldn't be surprised if GWS get the points here.
What about you, Woody?
Yeah, I think the big three come in. Papley, McInerney and McCartan are all back. So
and
I think
Heaney's back too.
Yeah, and they've been the best side all year, and I think they win.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Gabba. It's the Brisbane Lions and Carlton. This, of course, is a throwback to last year's preliminary final. Also, it's a throwback to opening round, where the Blues found themselves 46 points. Yes, 46 points in arrears. They mounted a stunning comeback to record a 1-point win. And Lloydie, all season, we've been talking about their skipper, Patrick Cripps. An All-Australian again, a Brownlow fancy. He's going to be pivotal on Saturday night, isn't he?
He is, and even when they were going to fall out of Premiership or finals calculation, he destroyed the West Coast Eagles. He puts his team on the back all the time, and I think that's who you have to stop if you're the Brisbane Lions, and they had the man to do it. Josh Dunkley, the last time around, they played on each other. He just kept constant touch, and I look forward to hearing from Clarko about that. So, he's an absolute. I think he's the key to them. If you can shut down Patrick Cripps, I think you're halfway home with what the Brisbane Lions have, and they've got Berry and they've got Dunkley, who have the opportunity to play that role on Cripps.
Yeah, listen, Cripps is a beauty. He's a Brownlow medalist, but he's their captain. 6'4", such a huge body and so strong. But you just got to make sure you can be as physical as you can with him. And Dunkley has had that matchup in several games that they've played over more recent seasons, and has done a really, really good job. And I'd expect that would be the case again in this week's game. And if they can nullify Cripps's influence around the middle of the ground, particularly at stoppage, then he can't give the Carlton midfielders the supply on the outside, and I think that's really important for this game.
Yeah, and the other aspect of it, which I'm really interested that you brought to the table here, Clark, was the ball movement of the Brisbane Lions. So I'd probably picture them as being this fast ball movement side, getting into Charlie Cameron, but it's not the case all the time.
Yeah, they're one of the best sides in the competition at denying you the footy through uncontested marks, and as you can see with this vision here, they're very precise. And if you give them time and space, they'll cut you to pieces and get the ball into a really potent forward line. But if the pressure can be applied and you deny them their exits and it can make it really, really difficult, and it locks the ball in their back half. And so if Carlton are on their game in terms of their pressure, but it's just whether or not they can maintain that for the whole of the game. And I mean, last year's final, the equivalent last year in the prelim, Carlton started really well and they couldn't maintain that pressure on the Brisbane ball movement for the whole game, and it'll be intriguing to see whether they can do it in this week's game.
What's your thoughts on what's set in with their inaccuracy?
Well, part of it is because I think because they're not razor sharp and quick with their ball movement from one end of the ground to the other, that by the time they do get the ball inside their own 50, despite it giving a chance for their defence to catch up, there's more congestion in there too, so it does make it more difficult for them to get easy shots on goal. But it allows them to defend behind the ball very, very well. So it's a little bit of a mix of both, but I can understand why they're not kicking as accurately, because sometimes there's that much heat on the footy in their front end when they're having shots that they can cause them to kick points rather than goals.
And last one, can you bring in too many players if you're Carlton? So can you bring in too many and upset things?
Yeah, I'd be concerned with that.
Yeah.
I think continuity and routine and stability of your side is really, really important. And having said that, the quality of the guys that are coming in for Carlton, you'd hope that they can just pull one out of the bag and do it all together. But they might have one, but they're talking about making 6, 7, 8 perhaps changes. And I think that's a lot of change to be making at this time of the year. But they've got no choice really. They're some of their best players, and they've just got to hope that they can pull one out of the bag on the big stage.
And one has already been confirmed in Sam Docherty. He is certainly coming in, but there's going to be, as you say, Clarko, perhaps 8 or 9 changes. 5th v 8th, for me, this one is pretty simple. It should be the Lions to win. Do you see it that clearly?
Yeah, I do, but the Sam Docherty, I mean, it's a special story, isn't it? You know, does his knee in the first game of the season against this opponent, I think, wasn't
on the same ground.
And then returns. You know, he's such a heartbeat of that footy club, and you can see some of the vision of his teammates celebrating his inclusion in this week's game. That can carry you a long way in a big final, but. Yeah, home ground at the Gabba for Brisbane. They'd be bitterly just disappointed if they dropped this game. And yeah, despite Sam coming into the side for Carlton, I'm concerned about how many changes they're going to need to make. You know, I'm a big one around routine and stability and continuity, and I don't think Carlton have got that at the right time of the year.
Brisbane or the Blues?
Yeah, Brisbane for me as well.
Yeah, Brisbane, I think, across the board. Well, thank you for joining us for our first episode of Finals Focus, afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, the only place to go for all your footy news. We'll see you again next week, and until then, enjoy the footy.
Join me, Cal Toomey,
and me, Riley Beveridge,
every Wednesday on Gettable, the definitive source of everything you need to know for player movement, trade, free agency, draft and contracts.
Watch Gettable every Wednesday or catch it as a podcast wherever you listen.